Hello, everyone. We're going to take a little bit of a detour today into an area that I've been running into a little bit over the last while when it comes to the idea of being diagnosed with any sort of a mental health challenge or mental health disorder. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the spectrum of human experience and how, for a lot of people, when we're looking at diagnosing something within mental health, when people look at the symptoms, they'll say, oh, well, I have that. I've experienced that. Or I meet some of the criteria for this disorder or for this diagnosis. And so I just wanted to touch really briefly on, why that actually happens. I know in some of our earlier videos, I talked a little bit about some of the disorders that are out there and how they occur on a spectrum. And the reality is that all mental health diagnoses and disorders pretty well occur on a spectrum of human experience. And so they are not so much a completely unique experience as they are an extreme experience of something that can be considered part of the human experience. Now, granted, there's a few, you could debate that on, if you really wanted to get technical, we could probably, make that fit for some things like, schizophrenia, that's something that's a little harder to see. But when we're looking at the more commonly occurring diagnoses, let's say for anxiety, for depression, when we talk about the idea of someone being anxious. Now, anxiety, as I've said before, is a perfectly normal human emotion that we need to an extent. Otherwise, we end up, not doing things with the forethought or doing things very recklessly. Whereas when it becomes a disorder or it becomes challenging, it hits an extreme where it starts hindering, interrupting, or even halting a person's life. Now, there is a difference between the expression of each slightly, but overall, yes, you're going to be able to say I've been anxious before, because in small doses, anxiety is okay. When we talk about the word depression, now in our culture now, depression is a word we often use, and we refer to it generally in the popular vernacular as, feeling really down or kind of out of it. And again, that type of emotional variation is normal for human beings. We do have days where it's like, I just don't want to get out of bed today. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to talk to anybody. But for those of us who have those normal mood swing experiences, generally, we kind of get up and we get going and we kind of push our way through it, and our mood shifts because we have a normal variation in mood throughout the days, and we start feeling better. When depression hits the extreme and becomes diagnosable, people aren't able to just shake it off like that. And again, it becomes interruptive of life, and it will slow down what people want to experience. They're unable to even leave the house sometimes or get out of bed. They can't do anything around the house. So again, it's the extreme end of the spectrum. And, when we're looking at, say, narcissism, we've been talking about that a little while over the last bit. Narcissism in general, when you read through the diagnoses for narcissism, or even some of the other personality disorders out there, the OCD personality disorder, for example, we will find, for most of us, we meet a few of those criteria. Maybe we meet several of the criteria, but we meet them at a very low level. So, for example, for narcissism, a certain level of self-interest is necessary. We often talk about it as, narcissism as being a bad thing. But if we use the clinical term narcissism, it actually just refers to a focus on self-interest or a focus on promoting the self and a positive view of the self. Now, in small doses, there's nothing wrong with that. We all need to, say, apply for a promotion at work because we think we're good at the job. We all need to be able to say, okay, I need to look after myself right now, or you can't call me those names because I'm actually better than that. And that type of narcissism, in a purely clinical term, is normal and needed and okay. It becomes problematic when it hits the excessive end of the spectrum and it takes over the way a person functions. And it's no longer something a person can use when necessary, but set aside when unnecessary. If we're looking at obsessive compulsive personality disorder, for example, which is different than obsessive compulsive disorder itself. But when we're looking at that type of a personality disorder, we all have a certain need for order, and we all have a certain need for structure. I mean, there's certain stuff I do in the morning in a very specific routine, and I can guess most of you probably have something like that in your life as well. We all have certain things we like in certain places. And if someone puts it somewhere where it feels uncomfortable, we'll go and change it. So that type of desire for order and that little bit of rigidity, again, is actually a healthy thing. We need that to kind of create some order in the chaos of our lives. However, it becomes disordered when it becomes the extreme. It hits the far end and starts interrupting a person's life and becomes a sole focus. Same thing with obsessive compulsive disorder. People often will say, oh, that's my OCD. Because again, it's kind of hit the pop vernacular to be part of what we use to describe kind of that discomfort if something isn't going the way that we'd like it to go, or there's certain thing that bothers us if someone doesn't put the dishes in the dishwasher all the time, or whatever. So again, we all have those little quirks about our personality. We all have that desire for things to be the same where we like it to be. When we push it to the realm of disorder, people can't function and can't stand the idea that things are not the way they would like them to be, or they can't let go of thoughts or ideas to the point where it takes over their life, where it becomes distressing. And in some cases, their entire life becomes ordered around making sure everything is the exact same way it needs to be so that they feel comfortable or their anxiety goes down. So I just wanted to touch on that briefly because I think that's one of the things that I run into a lot is just, well, does this mean, I have a personality disorder because I have some self-interest? Or, does this mean that I'm depressed because, I was feeling really sad yesterday? And so for those of you who are noticing a little bit of that, but overall you're functional and it's not interrupting your life and it's not making you excessively unhappy, then, it's likely not a disorder or a mental illness. It's probably just part of who you are as a person and part of human experience. However, if you do have something occurring or you are seeing characteristics in yourself that you are worried about or that are causing difficulties or causing you to start reacting or be reacting in some extreme ways or some ways that, when you look at other people, they might seem a little abnormal, then there's nothing wrong with making an appointment with a professional and just talking it through, getting it checked out just to be sure, because it's very difficult to self-diagnose. But if you do have a concern, make an appointment with a professional. We at Sojourn here can make some appointments as well. And just have a quick chat and see where you feel you're at. But normally, until it becomes life interfering in some way, shape, or form, you're probably pretty normal, which for me, I mean, is good some days to remember, I'm normal, even though I have some strange days that I'm sure most of you do. So, just keeping in mind, normal isn't perfect and normal has some variation and it's okay to be normal.